Hey, TOB fans, Julian here. Another bonus podcast for you. We haven't done one of those in a while. This one may be familiar for those who have been listening for a while. We've done bonus podcasts with episodes of the Daily DVR podcast before. I recently joined friend of the show, Axel, on his podcast, Daily DVR, to talk about a variety of things. One of them being Ahsoka. Obviously, you've been following our content the last few weeks or last month or so, 2 months, specifically small screen Star Wars. We've been covering Ahsoka week to week, doing those deep dive breakdowns. It's been really fun. So if you haven't checked those out and you've been watching Ahsoka and are looking for some companion material, I highly recommend that. But this is a little bit more generic. So we kind of just talk about Ahsoka in a more generalized way, less spoilery. So enjoy that if you're looking for something a little bit more lightweight on the Ahsoka front. We also talk about a few other things. We talk about the end of the writer's strike. Of course, the actors are still on strike. And what that means. We also talk about more ads coming to streaming services and kind of the declining success of streamers in general and what that means for Hollywood. So it's a variety of topics. It's all very fun. So enjoy that and come back to the feed later this week for our season finale recap and review of Ahsoka. So look for that as well. We'll be back later this week with that. Until then, enjoy.
Welcome back, everybody, to Daily DVR. Another week. Today is Monday, September 25th, 2023. We had a fantastic week on the DVR Podcast Network last week. We did a bunch of shows, had some great guests. You can check all that out at dvrpodcast.com. Man, we talked reality, we talked football, we talked all types of television. With Mike and with Scott and with the boys over at Around the Couch. Again, dvrpodcast.com. Also become a patron at patreon.com/DVR. I have a great guest today, a man who's been on our show before. I've been on his show. I love listening to him, whether he's talking about Star Wars or talking about the world of TV and film news and such. His name is Julian. He's coming from the Tower of Babel podcast, as well as Small Screen Star Wars, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Axel. It's good to be here. Always fun to get back on Daily DVR. And yeah, Small Screen Star Wars. So it's kind of a spin-off show. I don't know. I wouldn't say we have a network of shows, because it's just me and a couple of folks. But we do a spin-off show where we cover Star Wars on the small screen. It's really just all Star Wars that we can kind of we can get in. About really, it's doing these weekly recap reviews. Right now, obviously, Ahsoka is in the middle of its about to wrap up. Only 2 episodes left this season, and so we've been covering that. It's been really fun. Although, as things go, this season's been wrought with technical challenges. I've had my computer's been in and out of the shops and all that kind of stuff. So we normally do live podcasts for those as well, live recordings on Wednesdays. But those have been hit and miss for this season. But that's okay. We'll be back for whatever the next series is. I think it's Skeleton Crew, which is the one that comes up after Ahsoka. But there's still lots to talk about. Yeah, Small Screen Star Wars, really excited about it.
Definitely. Well, you know what? I always save this to the end. Why don't we start off too? Tell people where they can find you.
Sure. So head over to towerofbabel.ca. That's BABBLE. And you can find our regular show, which is the Tower of Babel podcast, which we cover film and TV, as well as Small Screen Star Wars, which is there. And then if we start up any other spin-off shows, that's where you're going to find that. And on Twitter or X, at Tower Babelcast, facebook.com/Tower Babelcast. And that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Nice. All right. Awesome. Okay. So we got all the pleasantries out of the way. We've got some stuff to talk about. I definitely want to talk about Ahsoka. I've been loving it. Talked a little bit about it with Mike on Friday. He just kind of came to it in the last episode. I've loved the whole thing, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But I wanted to start out because the news came out last night that it looks like the Writers Guild and the studios have reached a tentative agreement. The actors are still on strike, but this definitely signals hopefully an end to the stalemate that has been gripping Hollywood for what is it? Almost over 3 months, 4 months it's been going on. And we still don't really know the details of the deal. I think that it still has to be voted on by the Writers Guild members. And then once that's done, hopefully that there'll be talks with the actors will be forwarded as well. Already, if you check the trades, as they call them, you see they're already planning on some of the broadcast shows coming back, and of course the late night shows, Saturday Night Live and all that kind of stuff. But we don't really have details, but I don't know if you have any thoughts about this so far, or if you think they may have gotten anything good, or of course if AI is going to take over the universe. I don't know. What do you think, Julian?
Well, I don't think AI is taking over anything anytime soon. I work with AI on a regular basis, and it's really not as smart as people seem to think it is. But that's a story for another day. I guess, yeah, I mean, I was kind of tuned out. I tried to check out this weekend. I've been really, it's been busy. So I figured, hey, this weekend it seemed like a good time to check out. So I only saw some of this stuff kind of popping up on the social stuff late last night. So again, and as you said, there's no details, so I guess I didn't miss much. But that being said, obviously it's great to hear that the writers are going to start getting back to work. Personally, I don't watch the late night shows, so like that, the writer's strike has had almost no effect on the programming that I watch. The truth is, though, it will next year, because the things that would have been in production now for release next year won't be ready in time. So we'll feel the pains later. It's just a deferred payment, basically, on that strike. And obviously, ultimately, getting the writers back to work means that you can get into production or get into pre-production, but you need the actors to get into production. So until the actors are back to work, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I'm more curious to see what concessions the studios made around that AI stuff, which I think was one of the main concerns, as well as the residual conversation and kind of how the impacts it might have on the streaming landscape. Obviously, there's some stories about that later as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think for now it's a bit of a mixed bag, because I hope that the writers got a fair deal. I assume that they're not going to accept anything they don't think is a fair deal. But let's get. And I imagine that it's going to be less of a challenge to get the actors back to work. But ultimately, it for me and someone who doesn't work in the system, obviously, it's about the outputs, right? What are they producing? What are they creating? And right now they haven't been making anything. So I'm just excited that they can get back to making fun stuff.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I'm not a big watcher of late night shows. Didn't really affect my TV viewing, but as you said, it will in the future. But then, also, this is a great excuse to maybe for even, as we know, a lot of this stuff is really driven by Wall Street. And if there's a push and the stocks are going, they want to spend some money, who knows? We could have another little kind of heyday, or we could have a re-examining of the studios saying, hey, we saved a lot of money not making shit for 4 months. Let's, everything looks good. Let's not make as much shit like we're, so. Yeah,
I could see that. I could see there being a correction, as it were. So back to maybe a more stable production schedule. We saw Disney already say that under previous management, the edict was, make as fast as much as you can. And we saw how that affected things like Obi-Wan. The quality of the visuals of that show were lacking, especially compared to things that we're getting even now. So, I don't know how it's funny to me, because it's a bit of a catch-22 in that situation where it's like, oh yeah, they saved a bunch of money by not releasing anything or not making anything over the last 4 months. But ultimately, their business is making things, so they can't do that for very long. That's not really a sustainable model.
Right.
So, they have to get back to a place where they can make stuff, and that helps them make money. Now, what that actually means, in terms of how that's going to affect the consumer, we'll find out. I imagine when the details come out, I think we're going to realize there's going to be a situation where we're going to see pretty quickly that prices are probably going to go up again, which sucks, but that's probably the most likely.
Yes. Interesting. Yeah, all of this really, what it means to us is how much do we pay? How much stuff do we get? Right? When do we get it?
Exactly. And how much of that money that we pay goes to the writers, or how much of that money goes to the actors? And, obviously, historically speaking, it's not been that much. Hopefully that arithmetic will change here, and there'll be more of that money will go to the creatives. I mean, that would be ideal. I think people would feel a lot better. And, maybe I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I think personally, I would feel a lot better knowing that, if every year my price for Amazon Prime or Netflix or whatever goes up, that at least a good chunk of that money goes to the creatives, not Ted Sarandos or whoever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Or guys in suits who don't even watch TV.
I don't know. What do they do with their time?
I don't know. I guess they exercise a lot and manscape. That's just what I figure. A lot of waxing.
That's so they can look good on their yachts.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But I know we both agree. I'm just historically a union person. I know there's problems, with any system when human beings get together. But there has to be a check and balance, and I hope for one thing, or if anything comes of this, is that maybe the studios consider the people that make things work. There's other humans, so you all have to work together and share a little bit, and it can be better that way. And I think that holding out for so long was a good thing by the writers, and it was good that the actors came in just to show their strength and say we're here, and hopefully, like you're saying, the lower level peeps, we're not talking about the Brad Pitts, we're talking about the Heaths, we're talking about the catfishes out there who are acting and or writing, people trying to work in this industry. Even the PAs get a little bit more of a cut and are treated better. But like you said, sometimes the cost gets passed on, and sometimes that cost can get passed on to us in other ways. And that is my segue to our next topic I wanted to discuss with you. I talked a little bit about it with Mike, but some more information has come out about it. And that is that beginning next year, Amazon is pivoting to a default ad option on Amazon Prime, meaning that unlike the other streamers who said, hey, you pay $17 for Netflix right now, do you want to just pay $10? Well, you can, but you'll get ads. What Amazon is doing is overnight, Amazon Prime will just have ads on it. And if you don't want ads, you're going to have to pay some more money for it. So it's kind of the reverse of what everyone else has done, but this is Amazon, right? They've been experimenting with Freevee, with all these fast channels, right, which are ad supported. So I guess they figure most people get Amazon for the Prime, like the packages. If we add ads to this, a lot of people might not even notice. I keep on quoting this recent study that showed I got to go back and find it, but it was 20 or 25% of the people who get Apple TV Plus even know they have it. Most people don't even know they have it. And that
really?
Actually more people watch Peacock than Apple TV Plus. I have to add the plus, but it's their own channels. We talk about things in terms of what we like and what's prestige, but what people are really watching and what's making money is what sets the tone. What do you think about this? I think it's kind of a radical idea by Amazon, but I I don't think it's going to backfire. I think most people aren't even going to realize it. They're going to be like, oh, I guess Amazon Prime always had ads. I just don't think the general public is really even that educated about what they're paying for and what has ads and what doesn't. That I think it's probably going to be a big boom for Amazon, and it's going to spell the doom of all the rest of the streaming without ads for us. And I just think it's bad news, baby.
Yeah, well, as you know, I have strong feelings about these things. I feel like, and this is just a general statement, but if I'm paying for something, a premium price for something, especially, I should be getting ads. That's not that it drives me nuts that when I go to the movie theater and paying $15 for a movie ticket, I'm getting ads before I even get to the previews. Again,
agreed.
I'm being sold and I'm still having to buy it. So it's like, it just feels like they're getting to double dip, and it really irks me. And so in the cases where it's like, okay, we're going to introduce an ad tier, it's never bothered me because, that was always at a kind of a discounted price. This kind of gaslighting that Amazon's doing here. First of all, Amazon, it's crazy because it's like this idea. It's like, well, we were always giving you a deal, but now, if you really want a deal, if you really want to get ads, you have to pay extra. It's like, then that was never the deal, right? And this is the same thing that with Netflix. It was like, well, you want to share your password, now you're going to pay more. Well, again, that was never the deal, right? So nothing bothers me more than companies changing the terms of an agreement on a customer to make their experience worse, right? Because I understand investing in products, and I understand investing in experiences and all those kinds of things, but the money doesn't go back into these services a lot of the time. It goes into shareholders' pockets. And, not to get into a rant about how capitalism works, but, there's this concept, I don't know if you've heard people talk about it in shitification, where basically you create a product or a service that provides tons of value, and then you slowly make it worse and worse and worse at the expense of the customer, to reduce costs and increase revenue for shareholder return, right? Because eventually the shareholders come and the investors come and they want returns. And we see this all the time across all sorts of services. Netflix, we just saw it happening with that, right? And it's a scourge on the internet landscape, in my opinion. Now, is that what's happening here? I don't know. The thing with Amazon Prime Video, which is that, like, a lot of people don't know that they have it, similar with Apple TV Plus. It comes with their Prime subscription, which they get because they want the free delivery. But if we're talking about insurtification, well, we might as well talk about how the fact that free 2-day delivery isn't really 2 days anymore. It'll say, hey, get your free 2-day delivery, and it'll arrive in 2 weeks. So, things are just, generally speaking, things seem to be breaking down, but it doesn't seem to be a technology problem. It's a intentional, almost sabotaging of a product.
Yep. Your iPhone goes slower.
Well, I don't necessarily believe in that one.
But
I just think that's
what
do get slower.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about, though, right? Where you
it's the same idea.
You lock them into an experience. They get used to it. You make it shittier, but then you can also say, "Hey, guess what?
Also charge more."
Yeah, if you pay, this is what Amazon's going to do. You're going to have to pay $2.99 a month if you want to get no ads. But guess what? They're not going to show 18 minutes of ads like we're used to an old episode of television being around 40 to 42 minutes with about 18 to 20 minutes of commercials, right? No, they're going to say we're only going to do like Freevee does, which is what this whole thing was an experiment. Once they did Freevee, I was like, Freevee is going to become Amazon Prime, which is basically what's happening. They've been throwing shows back and forth on it. That's basically what's going to happen, right? Because I think that
is it pre-roll? Is it just pre-roll ads, or is there mid-roll ads?
No, there's both. Yep.
Mid-roll,
and they do
really
it on some movies too. Some movies actually
That
in the
should
middle
be
of
that
the
should be
movie.
illegal. You can't. There's no way you should be interrupting movies for ads.
I
I'm
know,
sorry. This
but
is
so
not.
many people already do that, Julian. You know, so a lot of these fast channels, which are the free ad supported networks, they do that. They'll show a movie, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, but that's free.
you know,
Like,
yeah,
I understand that,
but
but why
they're
am I paying? What am I paying for then?
But I
don't get it.
think what
I don't
they're
know.
trying to say is that if the public sees Amazon Prime Video as a freebie that's thrown in with their Prime package shipping, right? Their free shipping, then why don't we treat it like that and make them pay for, it's just like in economics too, where human beings we're all programmed that we actually feel better when we pay for something. We feel like we're getting something better, right? Like if you make the price too low, someone will consider it to be cheap or low quality or low class, even if everybody is telling them, no, it's actually better. People just won't believe it because capitalism has so programmed us into this. Amazon's taking advantage of that. And I agree with everything you're saying, man. I feel like when we pay for Amazon Prime, I feel it's the packaging, but I consider it to also be the video service because obviously I'm sitting here fucking talking about this shit every day on a podcast. But I don't think other people do. I think we are, and those listening to us are a select few, and most people are probably not even going to realize it is a kind of gaslighting. But I guess I don't know if that's gaslighting is such a
I don't know. It feels like I'm fighting this uphill battle against what is consistently anti-consumer moves, right?
Yeah.
It's like no one's at the wheel, no one's watching and saying, wait a minute, like, hey, these people agreed to this X thing, and you keep changing the terms over and over and increasing the prices over and over again. It's like at some point the buck has to stop somewhere. And if you recall during the era of Game of Thrones was the number one show in the world, but it was also the highest pirated show in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And HBO historically hated that, constantly trying to do takedowns, all that kind of stuff to try to limit the damage. But of course, there's nothing. It's really hard to actually do that in practice. Once it's out there, it's out there. It really feels like, and the studios made a huge inroad on piracy as a problem over the last decade or so because streaming was very convenient, and it's more convenient than piracy. But when you start changing these policies, you start implementing these anti-consumer moves, and the worst part is when you're not seeing it as a customer return on that. The shows aren't getting better; they're not higher quality. HBO obviously an exception to that probably, but in Canada we pay this premium for Crave, which is it's all its own scam. But I guess for me, it just comes down to piracy is going to come back. I'm not advocating for piracy.
Interesting.
It's just going to happen. It's just a natural side effect of these policies is going to create a revived piracy environment. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. And again, they haven't actually solved this problem already, but it wasn't good enough for them. So, back to the drawing board. And again, just on Amazon as well, it's like if they want to be seen as a premium streaming service, having it be seen as a bundled with your shipping service with a $3 premium to get ad free, I don't think that's the recipe, right? You want people to care about Rings of Power and The Boys and other things that they've got on that, Wheel of Time, whatever. I don't watch that show, but anyway, you want people to care about those things. Bring the content, which they're doing. That was what they were doing, and it was working, in my opinion. They also revised the UI, which desperately needed it. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. It just feels like it's so transparent in terms of decision making, why they're doing it this way, or what's motivating them. It's if there was any ounce of shame within these organizations, they would at least issue a statement saying, hey, here's how we plan, here's why we're doing this, here's how we plan on investing that additional income or whatever, that kind of thing. But no, it's never that. We'll never get that information,
dude. It's hilarious. In one of my former lives, I was a journalist, and one of the things that I wrote about in the late 90s was internet marketing and marketing in general. So I learned as a journalist how often journalists just copy press releases and don't ask any questions, but how this is kind of like how people are in general. I'm reading this Hollywood Reporter article, and they've got like bullet points, which is literally probably from a press release that they released, right? This is how they state it. Instead of saying you used to pay $139 a year for free shipping Amazon Prime, which includes Amazon Prime Video with no ads, but next year you're going to have to pay $36 more a year if you don't want ads, which is actually what's happening, right? That's actually what's happening. The product you were getting is being what did you say, shitified or something?
Shitified, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's what's happening. But instead, we're going to say it a completely confusing way, and then the Hollywood Reporter is going to just write it right in their article and say, how much is it going to cost? For existing Prime subscribers, nothing more. Amazon says it won't raise the price of a Prime membership. But we already know they are, though, because
it's like, this is what I mean. It's just the gaslighting thing. It doesn't. You're saying that you're not raising the prices, but you're changing the service. So
and the journalism follows, and the people follow. And
but
that's what worries me.
Because they have you locked in. What option do you have? Really? Yep, right. Yep, again, exactly. And this is where it comes back to the piracy thing. People will say no, enough is enough, and they will go to piracy.
That's a great point, man.
Because I can't buy it on DVD. There's no, or Blu-ray or whatever anymore. Physical media is going away, and then these streaming services are deleting content willy-nilly because they don't want to pay residuals or whatever.
Yep.
So it's like, it really couldn't be the gold. I think someone mentioned this recently, which is that the golden age of streaming is over. And we're now, I don't know what.
I know what it is. This is the era of the golden shower, where they piss all over you and tell you you're getting cleaner. That's what it really is. The age of the golden shower on television. All right. Well, let's move the discussion to something I think is more positive. A show that you've been covering. I believe you've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it. You have a more nuanced. I say I believe because I listen to your podcast, but you also have a more nuanced opinion or educated opinion. I have not, even though I'm a Star Wars fan, I have not watched all of the Clone Wars, nor have I watched all of Rebels. I've probably seen about half of both. I know a lot of the stories. I know the characters, but I didn't know this story. And we're going to do full spoilers here. Let's just spoiler it out for those who have watched Ahsoka, because I want to talk about like different parts of it and ask you some questions, see what your opinion is. But overall, I just say I've loved the show. I didn't know specifics how Rebels ended, and that has actually made watching the show more interesting for me, because I feel like it's a little bit of a mystery element is added to it, that I'm finding out more about characters that I just knew the beginning of their story for. Remember watching it on Disney XD? I always remember that. I don't even know if that channel still exists.
Yeah, I don't think it exists anymore. But Disney XD was its era during the Rebels, and they had the Rebels Recon after show stuff that they were doing was very. I was gripped. And remember, Rebels was the first really piece of content that Disney put out once after they bought
True.
Lucas.
Great point.
So,
great point.
Yeah.
So overall, we've got what, 1 or 2 episodes left of
2 episodes left.
Okay, 2 episodes. Okay.
This week, tomorrow will be the penultimate episode, and then the week after will be the finale. And speculation is that there will be a season 2, but it also could be. We also heard about the potential Grand Admiral Thrawn movie, so maybe this is leading into that. Although, that would be years away, presumably. So it's hard to say how that's all going to fit together. But as of right now, yeah, I mean, it's we're running into the finale of the season. It's getting close, and it's these 8-episode seasons, a little irksome. I would have liked a longer season of television. I understand, Obi-Wan was 8 episodes, Ahsoka's 8 episodes. I just feel like it would do themselves a favor to let these shows breathe a little bit more. But anyway, that's a whole conversation for another time.
Well, that's part of what I'd like to ask. What is if you had to kind of at this point talk about your overall feelings on this series and in relationship, as well as contrasting and comparing it to the other Star Wars series, what would your opinions be?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I really, really love it at times, and then other times I have, and maybe it could be that I'm just getting in my own head a little bit about some of these things, but it's just a little bumpy for me at other times. And I don't know. I think I wonder about the experience for people who don't have any knowledge of the Rebels characters or those stories or the Clone Wars for that matter. And I know they try in this show to kind of create they try to create an environment that feels welcoming for those types of viewers, but I don't know how effective that is. I was having a conversation with a guy at hockey the other day, and he was saying that he was watching Ahsoka, and he was like, wasn't sure about it. He's like, "Oh, I never watched the cartoon, so I don't know all these things. I feel like I need to." And so that's my biggest concern with the show, is that it's really fascinating for someone like myself or my co-host Rachel, who watched Rebels and rewatched Rebels and has studied these things for a long time and spends a lot of time thinking about Star Wars. But when it comes to just the regular viewer, it feels like some of them have kind of turned off or have been turned off by some of the Star Wars of late, right? I know some people couldn't get through Andor. I think that's a shame, because that's probably the best Star Wars we've had in a long time, since The Last Jedi, probably. Now, maybe not counting the Bad Batch, which is really, really good as well. But I guess I worry about those viewers, and maybe that's not for me to worry about. From my personal perspective, is that I think it's bringing a lot of the mysticism back to Star Wars that I think was missing in The Mandalorian. Mandalorian's great. No, season 3, notwithstanding, not as strong. But it brought that Western feel. It was very cool. I have no qualms there, but it didn't have that mystical force side of things that I think Dave Filoni really gets and understands. Yeah. Obviously we have this episode recently where we bring back a young Anakin Skywalker in this kind of like limbo situation or world between worlds type of environment. And I think that's gotta be hard for people who don't know, but for those who do, man, it's exciting, right? The getting to see Ahsoka in live action engage with a live action Anakin, in and of itself is exciting. I feel like they need to let things breathe a little bit. That whole sequence in the 2 episodes ago felt a little rushed at times, and ultimately, I just think that this show is very much just a sequel to Rebels, and I think that's fine. But if people were going and expecting anything else, I think they might be disappointed. I think visually it's stunning. I think it looks great. This is as good as looking as Andor was, and Andor was like very good looking. I like
Andor is good looking.
Well, the character and the show, yeah.
Just like
Diego Luna and the show itself. Yeah. And then I guess the introduction of Ray Stevenson as Balin Skoll and Shin Hati, Ivana Sankno. Really cool. I've gripped every time they're on screen. Obviously, massive shame that Ray Stevenson passed.
I know.
Before he got to even see the reaction to this, I think it would have been nice.
He would have totally had. There would have been.
So well received.
Yeah, there would have been like a Steve Renaissance, as they say. I feel
100%. He's really cool.
He's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and then ultimately, it comes down to a couple other things. Like, how are you feeling about the transition of characters from animation into live action? I think some better than others. I have mixed feelings about Thrawn. I have mixed feelings about Ezra. I have mixed feelings about Hera. Ahsoka, as played by Rosario Dawson, we've seen now a few times. She's had a lot more to do in this series than we've seen her have to do before. But largely, I like her performance. People have been giving her a hard time, saying it's wooden, it's cold, some of these things. I think we're about to see that change. So I think part of that was intentional. I really, really like Thrawn, played by Lars Mikkelsen, coming back from the animated series. I think the voice is perfect. You can't argue with that. I do think the look leaves a little to be desired. Looks a little silly at times. I mean, and maybe that's a little bit of just needing to get used to it. I do. I feel like maybe the color blue could have been a little bit darker. The eyes could have been a little. I mean,
I think
something to really make it feel a little bit less silly.
Oh, I found him to be so striking. Like as soon as he came on the screen, I was like, it is. I mean, I think like a lot of things in the Star Wars universe, sometimes there is a little bit of like a huh, and then you kind of have to sink into it. Even like with some of the, some of the animals, or sometimes they use like the more half puppet, sometimes more CGI. So there's a little bit of that goes on. But I felt that the presentation of Thrawn, as well as like what's his name, Captain Enoch.
Enoch's really cool. And the visuals of that are
the whole so cool. thing, the way that they were like, hey, huh, and they were doing their kind of like specific battle cry that was different, right?
But what did you think of the witches?
I liked the witches. I liked that because cool. I liked how the you're probably much better at the names than I, but trying to find her as I look through the Morgan. Okay.
Morgan Elsbeth.
Morgan. Yeah. I like how in the beginning Shin was like, she's a witch. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I was like,
and then she's like, more witches.
Yeah, more witches. And that's like telling the audience, okay, hey, she's not saying Sith. She's not saying Jedi, right?
Right.
She's using this word witches, and we're in the Star Wars. Now, I know a little bit about it, having known some of the stories, right? But I, like you were saying, that the whole way that this show is embracing the Jedi and like the weird mystical stuff, which they did a little bit in Mando with their creed and the creature, you know what I'm saying? And like the kind of the relationship he had with the woman who was, I'm not as good with the name, the woman who was like making the armor, right? Kind of the lead.
Oh, the armor.
Yeah. There you go. I knew it. The armor. But they get more into it. I agree with you that I'm sure there are people who watched the first episode and went, who the fuck's Ezra? What the? Oh, it's that fucking cartoon that I never watched, turning it off.
Right.
But if they stick with it like I did, because I just love Star Wars and I love anything with spaceships and sci-fi, and I just immediately, it was so breathtakingly, they've really solved the volume problem. And I love that they were challenged by it. They overdid it. They introduced it, and everyone was like, "Holy shit, the volume!" And then by the next series, everyone was like, "Yeah, I can kind of tell from the background that they're in it." And
then
they were
they overshot.
They listened.
With that, yeah.
They listened, right? And that's one thing is sometimes they listen a little too much, but as far as stories and such go, or they feel like they're listening, but I like that they listened. It looks spectacular. It's my favorite Star Wars show so far. I don't think it's the best. I think Andor overall is the best, but even some of the Mon Mothma stuff in Andor, I was a little bit like, okay, I liked it, and I liked the peek inside the society world of Star Wars, right? But and the Rebels kind of side too. But I did feel it drag a little bit for me. But this show is like, we have a purpose. And then they were like, bam, and they just took off. And I've been really excited by it. I wanted to ask your opinion. What do you think? To me, as I guess I would say more than casual Star Wars fan, I was aware of all the Timothy Zahn books and read a bunch of them and all that kind of stuff back in the day before they even... I cried the day Lucas sold Star Wars because I was like, fuck, we can finally get shit. You know what I mean? I was so excited.
Right.
You brought me back to that place when you reminded me that Rebels was the first Disney thing, you know? And a lot of these shows seem to be a retcon of explaining Rise of the Skywalker and what the fuck happened with the Emperor and all that kind of stuff. But in the midst of all that, you get the genius of Filoni and Favreau and these people who love Star Wars. And it's almost like they're rushing, they're trying so hard to craft a believable story, and they really have done it. And I'm kind of in awe that something, when I watched The Rise of Skywalker, and I was like, what the fuck? What? This is such a tack on. Like, they just wanted to bring back I was not a huge fan of it, even though I'll watch it again and it looks great and I love Star Wars. I am a bit in awe of what an amazing job they have done sprinkling all the cloning shit in Mando and Boba Fett and this and all this shit they've done. I have to give them so much credit. And I guess it's Favreau and Filoni, really, right? They've just made that movie. I feel like I want to watch The Rise of Skywalker again.
Let's not get carried away. You might not be surprised, but I have mixed feelings about this, because on one hand, we know that giving the keys to someone like Filoni to flush out a world like the Clone Wars ultimately created a whole new generation of fans, right? And really helped solidify the prequels, which had their own backlash of, which predates my recollection of any of that stuff.
Thank you. He did the same thing with the prequels. That's a lot of what Clone Wars. Great point.
Right. And it was just kind of like, hey, let's fill in the gaps. Let's provide context for things like, how Anakin went from a nice young man to murdering children so quickly. Right. We need to be able to bridge that somehow. And they felt like they needed to do that. And that's allowed them to introduce characters like Ahsoka, obviously, really establish the clones as characters and all these interesting things. And that spun off to things like The Bad Batch, which is obviously amazing show. I can't really speak highly enough about that in terms, it is peak Lucasfilm animation. It's really, really good stuff. But so that's one side of it, which is to say, I understand the model here, right? Which is filling in things that need a little bit more flesh on the bones. Now, on the other hand, I really like, despite the prequel, some of the silliness in the prequels, I really like those movies still. And I think there's a lot to bite, sink your teeth into. Now, compare that to the sequel trilogy, and I think it's not quite the same. The episode 7 really it's exciting, but it's very much a reflection of A New Hope, for better or for worse. Episode 8 is probably my favorite Star Wars movie. I love The Last Jedi, but it's so divisive. It's so divisive, and it's such a shame, because I think it's the first time in so long. I remember watching it in theaters and getting so excited about that movie, and then being so disappointed when I came out of the theater and realized that people hated it and they didn't understand. To this day, I don't really understand it. But I at least have a better understanding of why they feel that way. But either way, then they have this knee-jerk reaction. They rush the production for episode 9, and what we get is a turd. It's just such an unfortunate conclusion to what was so many great movies. And what you have now is this television space, because Star Wars exists on TV right now. There hasn't been movies since episode 9. And as much as I want movies to come back, I think they need to be the right movies, and I think they need to be handled with care, because I think you want to avoid people getting stale on this franchise. It doesn't have as much, in my opinion, leeway as something like Marvel does to play with tone as much. I think you can, as we saw with Andor and to some degree the Bad Batch and other things, but largely there's a formula here. And so if people get too burnt out on it, it could be disastrous for Lucasfilm, because Star Wars is Star Wars. So to try to make Star Wars into something else, I think has proven to be challenging and difficult. So now you have this world with things on TV, and they are set in this pre-sequel era timeline. And they're setting up these really interesting concepts about the Mandalorians and the future of the Jedi and all these things. But we know how those things play out. And again, that's not necessarily a gripe, because again, we know what happens to the Jedi during the Clone Wars too. That didn't make that show any worse. But it really feels like we're leading into this environment where we're going to have to try to explain episode 9. And explain the line, somehow Palpatine returned and all that stuff. I mean, cloning and all these other things, but we don't know the fate of the Mandalorians, and we do know the fate of the Jedi, Luke's Jedi Temple, for instance. We know what happens to that, so that's a little disappointing. And all these things, I guess the other thing is we also don't get to play with the characters. We're not playing with the Lukes, the Leias, and the Hans, right? The characters that people really like. I mean, they're in the periphery.
Hey, they
right?
will. The AI versions of them will be coming along soon enough. We've already. I'm sure.
I'm skeptical. I would almost prefer a recast to some degree.
I always prefer.
I don't know.
My friend, I always prefer a recast. Yeah, I think. That would be but I also prefer something new. That's something.
Yeah, and we're getting something new. Yeah. I mean, we're bringing. I mean, to some degree, right? I mean, Thrawn isn't new, but bringing Thrawn into live action and setting up this Heir to the Empire movie and all that stuff, that's really exciting. But it's weird now, because at least in episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, we deal with the tail end of the Clone Wars. It starts, the Clone Wars are happening, and then at the end, and then Order 66 happens, and then that what happens, right? But in the scenario with episode 8 and 9, or 7, 8, and 9, there's no mention of a war with the Imperial remnant or whatever, if that's what happens with Thrawn or whatever. There's no we're dealing with all this stuff about how the New Republic is kind of dysfunctional and bureaucratic and all this stuff, and that's interesting. But it just feels like it's so ham-fisted, because they need to be able to justify this position of demilitarization, which ultimately leads to their destruction in episode 7, which is also crazy that they did that in episode 7, because they needed to reset the board. So instead of getting to play with a resurgent New Republic, we have to just take them, wipe them off the board. And I think that's, some of these things, these decisions that were made hastily, now they're having to fit what is ultimately a very interesting story, what we're getting now with Ahsoka and Mando and all that stuff, and the Mando verse for short, right? But it has to fit into this kind of very oddly structured, rushed, and poorly planned sequel trilogy, which is different from the prequels. I think that's the distinction, right?
Well,
that was well planned.
Do you think, when you look forward, right, and we know that they're planning to bring Rey back now, right?
Sure.
That's at least what they say. I mean, God, they've made like 50 fucking announcements.
I can't take a word. I can't. They can't trust them, because they're not. Until I see a movie in production, I'm not going to take their word.
They also say that they are building to a climactic melding of all the shows, where they'll come back all together to, I guess, discover the Emperor before like Rey, like kind of fill in that point too. Where does it go past that? Like once they bring us, do you think that they're going to continue with some of these characters actually into a movie with Rey and stuff like that? Because some of them will still technically be alive, right?
Yeah, I don't know is the short answer, because
would you like
theoretically
that?
you could then put the podcast, you could put the franchise on pause for a moment, let it kind of, rebuild some of the anticipation and then relaunch it in some way. But I just don't think that they can really wait that long. They got to keep things like the animation studio needs to, stay busy. They got to pay those people and they got to do stuff with that money, right? So animation's got to continue. They've got a whole production studio that is set up for ongoing production, whether it's with the volume or on in sets in London and all these other things. So I don't think they really can. Like, I don't think you can slow the engine down that much. So I expect what we'll get is kind of like, okay, we're really into a new era. You know how they kind of launched the High Republic era in the books.
Yes.
Yep. And it's taking on a life of its own.
They're going to do a show.
Yeah, and they're going to do exactly. Which is Acolyte will take place at the tail end of that. But I guess you could launch this kind of like post-sequel era with whatever, Rey's New Jedi Order, and you could spin off from that and do all sorts of new things. I think what's something that has been bothering me a little bit in the back end. And by the way, just so it's clear, I really like Ahsoka. I think it's really good. But just talking about the state of the union, as it were. So I think that they pulled so many things in from the extended universe or expanded universe, the Legends stuff now.
Yeah.
And I think
first they were like, this is not real. Then they were like, okay, a lot of it's real.
Well, they just pick and choose, which I think is even more confusing.
Yeah,
right.
It is.
So you almost, I would almost want to challenge them to say, come up with something completely original, right? You have good, I think Rey as a character is a fine character. I think I actually really like her. I think there's lots you could do with that, post sequel trilogy timeline that's completely unwritten, completely open, and you can do all sorts of interesting things. And the thing is that the galaxy's bigger than Luke, Han, and Leia, which we know now, obviously, because we've expanded the cast with things like Din and Ahsoka and stuff like that. But eventually, we grow up out of those things, and we need to introduce new characters and new ideas and new concepts, right? So I think there's some of that needs to happen, some freshness that needs to come back to really reinvigorate things. For now, I think a lot of the connections into, Clone Wars and Rebels and all these kind of like threads of nostalgia, I guess, for lack of a better term, I think give it some momentum. But eventually that stuff runs out of steam, as we're seeing in other places. So, yeah, I think a little bit of creativity, ingenuity, Andor is such a good example because it takes a concept that we know, but really just, puts a microscope to it, really makes it into a character study. I'm not saying that Star Wars has to all become all of that, but there's something that could be learned from that in terms of how to kind of engage an audience in Star Wars that you might have lost, an older audience maybe that you might have lost over time, while continuing to work on the animated side to continue the younger generation. So there's lots to do. There's lots that can be done. I'm right now, I'm just enjoying this era that we're in, before things fall apart, which may happen. I hope not, but it's hard to imagine that they can sustain this pace for much longer. But I'm, enjoying the mystery that is Ahsoka, how the series finale or the, I guess season finale might end, is still fascinating to me. There's still lots of interesting things that can still be explored. But I think there's a lot of other things that they could be doing that I wonder if they're looking at. So yeah, mixed bag has been my message all along.
Yeah, you just got to enjoy the things as they come, right?
Exactly.
And I mean, I'm looking at a timeline now. See, this is what always fucks me up. I'm always trying to figure out what, because I was saying, when I said before, I was like, some of the people in Ahsoka and Mando and what we've seen in those shows should still be alive because this is happening I guess they call it ABY, after the Battle of Yavin, right?
Yes.
So Mando season 1 and 2 is 9 years after the Battle of Yavin, which is 5 years after Return of the Jedi. And then that's about the same time when Ahsoka takes place, about 11. But then the Force Awakens takes place in 34. So it's 23 years later, if my math is correct.
Yeah, we have lots of time. We have lots of time to fill. I guess that's one way of looking at it, just that, hey, we've got 20 years of timeline to fill in, so there's lots you can explore. But it does rob it a little bit of its autonomy when it feels like it needs to kind of like everything needs to lead to The Force Awakens, which needs to lead to eventually The Rise of Skywalker, which we try to avoid. Right. But, it's a tough balance. I don't envy that position of trying to find a way of telling interesting, unique stories in a time frame and in a timeline where you're kind of boxed in a little bit. Yeah. So that's not easy, but I think so far they've done a great job. So, kudos.
Well, the interesting thing is that supposedly the new Jedi Order movie with Rey is going to take place 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker, which would make it 35 years after the events of what we're seeing in Ahsoka, Mando. So, I mean, these are alien creatures. I don't know everyone's lifespan. That's exactly. You know what I'm saying? That's a thing to consider.
People are saying that it'd be cool to see a elderly Ahsoka, maybe.
Right. Or they could introduce.
I think I could. Yeah, sure.
They could introduce carbonating people, and then they wake them up. This could become like a foundation.
Yeah,
thing.
I guess.
Like they jump 100 years, right? Like they could say.
I guess in theory, yeah. We never really. I guess we've never really thought about stasis in Star Wars.
There you go.
Before.
They haven't yet. Stasis and time travel and stuff like that, which I'm okay with. They don't need to get Star Trekky. That's all right.
Well, they're doing time travel in a sense, but it's not time travel. They've been very explicit about that. That it's what the world between worlds is not time travel.
Yeah,
I guess it's just a different branding.
It's mystical. That's a mystical thing.
Yeah.
That's
hard to. It is okay. I think bringing the mystery back to Star Wars is a big part of what's missing. I think it's a big part of what's making Ahsoka work. Lightsaber duels with these kind of life lessons of good and evil and commitment and all these things that feel right at home in the Star Wars world that I think people are familiar with. I think it's going to go a long way of getting people back on board.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, I've had a great time talking with you. Before we go, I do have to bring up the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, because I know you're a big fan, and so is Heath Solo. We do a show called Around the Couch, which covers the NFL. And the guys have actually sent me some questions to ask you, okay?
Sure. Happy to be the token Canadian to help answer.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Brett wants to know, which set of rules do you like better, Canadian football or the NFL?
Well, I guess prerequisite to this whole thing is that I'm probably a little bit biased. I grew up playing Canadian football, right? And then I've been watching it since I was a kid. Of course, I've been watching the NFL as well. Personally, knowing both sets of rules quite well, I prefer the Canadian rules because I think it encourages more offense. I think it encourages a faster pace of play. And I think it allows for more creativity, right? So things like being able to do the pre-motion snap. Being able to run towards the line of scrimmage before the snap of the ball. And I really being able to do anything you want behind the line of scrimmage before.
Dude, let me tell you something. I don't mean to interrupt, but I have to say, every time I watch Canadian football, that fucks me up. I'm always like, why is that guy running already?
Right.
What the fuck is happening? Is he late? Because to the untrained eye and to the NFL, I grew up obviously with NFL. It appears as if the guy is an extra man running onto the field at the last minute. I'm always thinking that that's the only time you see that in the NFL, and it rarely happens anymore. Actually, it did. There was a game with the Ravens where they had 10 men on the field yesterday, but I think it was a Ravens. But it just, that fucks me up. But yeah, the wide open, isn't your, what is it? The field is wider too, right?
Yeah, it's a wider field, 65 yards wide, 110 yards long.
That's that's
and
big.
I think, you could make the argument that the smaller end zone makes for a more competitive play. I could see that. I would be open to that adjustment if you had to make some sort of change and shrink the end zone back, because a 20-yard end zone is pretty large. But I like the Rouge. This is something that people are constantly debating all the time, which is the single point for kicking the ball through the back of the end zone, whether that's on a punt or a field goal or a kickoff. I think it creates more scoring possibilities, different ways of scoring, which makes the games more competitive, more interesting. I don't know. I also prefer the the fair catch rule, or sorry, not the fair catch rule. I don't like the fair catch rule. The halo rule for punt return. So in CFL, you have to give a punt returner a 5-yard halo to catch the ball, but there's no fair catch. They have to catch it and return it.
I think the fair catch that.
Is so boring.
That's interesting. So guys will just wait to tackle them, so it'll be like a little bit of a match where they'll try to juke each other.
Exactly.
Oh, I like that.
It creates more opportunity for kick returns or punt returns. The
NFL's
fair catch rule is so
those.
boring. Yeah, it's so boring. So I don't know. That's how I just feel like it's more exciting. It's faster, and the pace of play. As I said, the pace of play is a little bit quicker too. So ultimately, I prefer the CFL rules. That's my answer to that question.
All right. Andy asks, when a player, let's see here, he says, do you like it when good players get picked up by the NFL? Do you see it as them graduating to like a bigger league, a bigger stage? Or would you rather that they stay in Canada?
Well, I don't know. That's a mixed bag. So that's a good question too. It hasn't happened on my team as much lately. It used to be, it just seems to come in waves where players will go down south and stick. And then you feel like, oh man, it's annoying at first because you lost a good player, right? But ultimately it's good for the league because it's exposure for the CFL. There's always the chance that player doesn't stick and comes back, and then that they have additional experience, again, additional exposure, which is great. There's examples like Cameron Wake, who was a star defensive lineman for BC, went down to, I think, Miami, and was a beast down there too. And that, I think, that's fun to see, right? And I think it also helps kind of deter the argument that the CFL quality of play is so much lower. I think this is such a misnomer because there are thousands of graduating football players every year. And there's only 32 NFL teams and there's 9 CFL teams. And those are really, and sure, there's the USFL and there's the new XFL and those kinds of things. And there's a bit of, I guess, some talent dispersal to consider there. But largely speaking, the premier positions to play football are in the NFL and the CFL. And the distinction in talent between the two is pretty thin, is how I feel about it. It's a different style of player. There's some absolute freaks of nature in the NFL who can do crazy things. And they would never play in the CFL. I get that. But because the money's not there. But at the same time, I think the level of play that you're getting out of the player, we have had players like Chad Ochocinco, for instance, come up to the CFL. Ricky Williams came up to the CFL when he was blackballed for marijuana use.
Yeah,
a couple other things. And they don't rip up the league. In fact, Ochocinco specifically on a podcast recently said that he was really blown away by the level of play that he witnessed in the CFL. Obviously, another good example of that would be there's just a Netflix documentary about him. What's his name?
Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Manziel, who crashed and burned. He tried to come up to the CFL and he didn't do anything. So there's a lot. There's I could pave a road with all the failed NFL players who tried to come up and who had big careers in the NFL and failed in the CFL. There's a lot of that. So the long answer to your question is, or the short answer after the long answer, is that it irks me a little bit because you want to see those players stick, but at the same time, it's good for the league and it helps deter that argument, which is a lot of that, which is that the CFL is just a worse, a lower quality league, and I guess to some degree maybe, but I think largely it's just a different game, which creates a different type of player requirement. But this is top tier football. It only gets slightly better, to be honest. Yeah.
All right. I like it, baby. Go CFL. Now, I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to kind of commiserate. I know that you had on the Blue Bombers, because I've talked about it with Heath, a guy named Chris Strevler.
Yes.
And
he was just back up here recently, actually. He was here for the Banjo Bowl, which is the weekend after Labor Day. We do a rematch against the Saskatchewan team. And he came up, he was signing autographs, and he's a bit of a character here. He's a like folklore legend now at this point.
Well, let me tell you something. He signed with the Jets, and he was on the Jets for about a year. And he played in preseason. Then he was in the NFL. We have a practice squad, which is basically what it sounds like. They practice, but they can also bring these players up to play. Unfortunately, he got hurt in the first preseason game, and then he reached an injury settlement with the Jets for the rest of the year, which means that he can't re-sign even to the practice squad. So it's kind of like when you're laid off, but you might come back to the job.
Sure.
From my understanding, from listening to all the Jets beat writers, the local reporters, is that they want him to come back. They will be open to him coming back once he clears from this injury period. And I don't know if you've been following the NFL, where Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be the Jets quarterback and he got injured.
Hard to miss that.
Yeah. I figured. Well, what am I? I always get this weight. 38, 39 years of being a Jets fan. And I just want to say that if you happen to see Chris Strevler, can you please tell him to somehow, like, maybe he could wear a mask. Maybe he could use AI to fool people or something. I don't know. Technology. Can he please, because our current quarterback, Zach Wilson, is so horrible. And I loved Strevler. I was like, fucking start. Last year, I wanted the guy to start the whole season. I think he's so fun. He's like one of those players from the heart, like you're saying, like a folk hero.
Yeah.
Like, he just kind of wills himself to be this player.
He helped break a 30-year Grey Cup drought for the Bombers by playing on a broken foot.
That's what we need. We're going on 50, 60. We're going from 60, 68. So, I mean, we really need that help, But I don't know. Just in case you see him, tell him that we love him. And I want him back on the team. I hope he comes back.
Yeah, it's funny because people here want him back too. They're hoping that he's not going to stick, and then they'll come back here. I doubt it. That'll probably won't happen at this point. But Nathan Work, same thing. He's an all-star Canadian quarterback. Played for BC last year. He's I think he's backing up in Jacksonville. And so, yeah, there's a few of those where we kind of hope that they come back, but we know the reality is that they're probably not. So glad to know that he's getting the love in New York, though.
People love him, dude. Trust me. If you were to ask New York Jets fans right now, list your top 5 people, a lot of them would probably have Strevler in that list, just because he's played he knows the system. You know what I'm saying? Like, he could come in rather quickly. And he was also just a joy to watch. Jets are like, I guess with the Lions, some other NFL teams, just perennial losers. And, most Jet fans just want to watch a good game. If you had a 30-year drought, then you know how it is. You just want to be able to cheer and feel like you're a valid human being while doing so.
Yeah, man, I get it. It's easy. It's been easy being a Bomber fan lately. That they won 2 back-to-back Grey Cups, lost the third one, which sucks. But we have that Grey Cup rematch coming up this week, so that's exciting. Yeah, no, and it's likely that they'll get there again. I mean, a little bit tougher competition this year, but it's nice. I think I've only watched 2 losses at home over the last 3 years. I have season tickets, and we've only seen 2 losses, I think, that whole time. Whoa. So it's like, it just makes for a very casual viewing experience when you're at the stadium and it's a win almost every game. So I feel that, and it wasn't like that for a long time. So I hope that your time eventually comes.
Well, I just want to end it. As I told you a little bit before, Solo just wants to cheer. He doesn't have a question. He knows he loves the CFL. He just wants, he's just saying big rematch of the Grey Cup Bombers versus Argos. And he just says, go Blue Bombers, He loves
Well,
it.
I'll take
he
it.
just wants to cheer.
Yeah, man. Of course.
There you go.
Well, hey, it was fun.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Well, why don't you tell us again where people can find you?
Sure. So, yeah, towerofbabble.ca, BABBLE. That's where you can find everything we do. Small Screen Star Wars is there as well. We're on all the major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, everything. If you have a podcast player, you can get us on there. Follow us on Twitter. I'm going to continue calling it Twitter. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
Follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast on Twitter. And you can follow us on Facebook as well. And if you want to help support the show, you can over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Tower Babblecast.
Awesome. Yeah, go over and do that, people. Putting out great stuff. Thank you very much for coming on again, Julian. We'll have you on again sooner rather than later. Maybe we'll be talking about a Blue Bombers victory. Maybe we can have Heath come on too. You guys can do a little.
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, if you want to break down some CFL, I'm happy to come down and give you all the insights that you guys need.
I dig it. I just got to get over that initial, like, what the fuck, that guy's running towards.
It's called a waggle, by the way. It's called the waggle.
It's it's hard to get used to as an NF because, though, I have to say overall, and as a Jet fan, this is what all of us are calling for, which is more emotion like that. I'm a big fan of pre-snap motion in general in the NFL. So I think it makes things more exciting. And you see a lot of the more successful and fun offensive team, like yesterday, the Miami Dolphins scored 70 points. They use a ton of pre-snap motion especially like with Tyreek Hill. And it's amazing. Yeah, I love it.
To me, as a CFL watcher, to see how the things that we've seen in the CFL for years and years and years get adopted by the NFL as these novel concepts that we've been doing for 30 years, 40 years. It's never ceases to be amusing to me. So, you can, there's obviously some shared things between those things, and not everything is unique to the CFL, but when you start seeing a lot of pre-snap motion and that kind of stuff, you know where it's coming from. I'll just put it that way.
Baby. See, we're breaking it down. The source of the force and the source of football right here.
That's
DVR, right. People. Getting down to the nitty gritty. Well, thanks everyone again for listening. Go check out Julian's pods. I'll put that in the show notes. Visit us at dvrpodcast.com, patreon.com/DVR. I will be back tomorrow. I think I'm doing that solo. Later in the week, I got the boys coming back for Around the Couch, and I have a very great guest book for Friday. I got some guest book for next week already. I'm working overtime. I'm thinking ahead. I can't even believe it. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for being here, Julian. Peace out, everybody.